So hi, welcome back to the 50/50 Project, where every week I talk through one item from a list made up of one thing I've learned for each year I have lived. And this week is apparently the large appliance edition of the 50/50 Project. I have a very limited window in which I can record this week, and it seems to slot up perfectly with when I need to be running my dishwasher, washer, and dryer. So we'll see how that goes. Today, we've got an item from the body category. And I feel like a little bit of a fraud even having a body category in this list in some ways. I've had a lot of success in a lot of areas of my life, but my biggest struggle has probably always been with the feeding and care and compassion for and confidence in the body. I'm not athletic. I am obsessed with sugar. I don't do yoga. I don't eat kale. I'm one of those vegetarians that manages to wring the worst, most non-nutritious foods possible out of a vegetarian diet. And I've kind of just lived my life sometimes like I'm a brain in a jar instead of an embodied corporeal being. I have come around very late to a real understanding and acceptance of the extent to which my brain and my body are bound together. And one of my biggest regrets at my current age is that I never cracked the code on some of the most basic and most vital forms of self-care. And while I continue to try to get better at caring for my physical form, I know I would be a happier and certainly healthier person now had I put more effort and attention on this area of my life in my 20s. Or even my 40s. So, word to the wise. That said, I have learned some stuff about being embodied along the way. Sometimes because I finally figured something out, and sometimes because I've had to live with the ramifications of continuing to neglect something important. Either way, I guess it counts as a life lesson. And so, here we are, in the body category, for thing number 7. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. In all seriousness, and as God is my witness, go to sleep. I know this is a really specific thing to focus on, and I realize it won't apply to everybody. Some of you may already have excellent sleep habits. Good for you. But I do think it factors for more people than not. The CDC says 1 in 3 adults in the U.S. aren't getting enough sleep. And sleep deficiency is a really big deal. The National Institutes of Health links it with diminished performance at work and at school and while driving, with trouble learning and focusing and reacting and functioning socially. It's been connected to mood fluctuations, frustration, crankiness, anxiety, and even depression. Not to mention stuff like diabetes, stroke, obesity, kidney disease, high blood pressure, and heart attacks. And if you look at the OSHA website, you'll see that they blame sleep deprivation for everything from major shipwrecks and plane crashes to factory explosions and nuclear reactor meltdowns. So, go to sleep. Sounds simple enough, right? But this is something I really struggle with, and have at least since my mid-20s when I took a job on third shift. I was an overnight telephone operator for about 5 years, and my shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And for a lot of that time, I was also taking classes in the mornings afterward. In some ways, it was a great job. It allowed me to finish a second degree. I was working with great people, many of whom I'm still good friends with to this day. But I'm convinced that time broke my circadian rhythm, and I'm convinced that sucker remains broken even now. If I am not pretty vigilant about when I go to bed, I will slide into later and later sleep cycles until I'm up until 5 or 6 a.m., and this can happen in the course of a week or two. I actually still have the capacity that I learned back then to essentially skip an entire night's sleep and function mostly normally the next day. Though I will say that skill is fading a little bit as I get older. But it has all taken a real toll on me, I think. And part of me really believes that I've bartered away years of my lifespan by losing so much sleep. So go to sleep. But how, right? After decades of wrestling with this problem, I've found only 2 or 3 things at most that actually kind of, sort of, almost help some of the time. So, quick aside, none of these things that I'm going to talk about right now, none of these tips that I'm going to offer are new or exciting or revolutionary. So if you've ever had any problems with sleep and you've gone looking for advice, you've heard all this before. So sorry about that. But the first thing I try to do is to go to bed and pull the plug on the day at a consistent time every single night. And I have tried to get really hardcore about sticking the landing on this. And while that sounds easy, it isn't. Because the whole bedtime rebellion thing is, in my experience, very real. After giving your whole day to your job or to other people, you just want some time to yourself at the end of the night, and I get that. And there's also the issue of just feeling like you flat out don't have what it takes to get off the couch and brush your teeth. There are some nights when washing your face and putting your stupid eye cream on might as well be the final ascent to the summit on Everest. And I get that too. I've had many nights where the only logical course of action seems to be to just die in place on the sofa in front of Colbert and hope that my neighbors will eventually find and dispose of my corpse. But I've learned I have to at least try to fight these feelings, and one thing I've had some moderate success with is to set a shut it down alarm on my phone 45 minutes before I want to be asleep. That says to me, whatever you're doing, it's over, and you need to get up and do essential closing tasks to get your teeth and your face and the house itself ready for shutdown. And I can look at that notification on my phone, and I can choose to heed it or to ignore it. But if I ignore it, I am at least aware for a second that I'm making a conscious choice to cheat tomorrow's version of myself out of some of the resources she's going to need. And it doesn't work all the time. I don't even know if it works half the time, but it does work better than any other scheduling trick I've found so far. Okay, next tip is about the whole blue light device thing. It is absolutely essential for me to stop shooting a trillion rays of screen light into my eyeballs right up until the millisecond I close them and intend to fall asleep. I think this is, for me, maybe the single most important thing I can do to ensure a faster, longer, more restful night of sleep. On days when I manage to shut the devices down 30 minutes before I close my eyes, it just makes everything better and easier in terms of sleep hygiene. And really, the best thing I can do for myself is to put the phone on the charger in some location away from my bedside. The choice to charge it in the kitchen or the office area instead of right next to my pillow is absolutely vital for me. Now, do I do that consistently? Of course not. I maybe succeed at that once a week, and the other 6 days I'm curled around my iPhone in the dark like it's a lost lover with the screen brightness set at like 180%. Because I'm an addict of some kind, as so many of us are these days, and I just need 5 more minutes to see if the lumberjack I follow on Instagram has cut any more eucalyptus wood, and then I'm just going to check on, 3 or 4 dozen celebrity cats. I really, really struggle to control the impulse to check and recheck and scroll and re-scroll, and it causes a lot of sleep disruption. And it's honestly embarrassing and kind of confusing for me that I can't stop this. So I'm going to try to do better, keep trying to do better at this, because I am convinced that it's vital to sleep, and I am convinced that sleep is vital to health and longevity. So finally, my last little trick is that I try to get myself at peace with the world, or more at peace with the world. Those of you who know me know I'm not a particularly, peaceful person in a lot of ways, but I try. And I realize that sounds super woo-hoo, but the truth is, I've spent a lot of time over the course of my life lying in bed, not sleeping, because I am instead rehashing grievances or holding imaginary conversations with people I'm angry with. It's very hard to drift off when you have a heart full of volcanic rage, I've discovered. So I've learned to intentionally decompress at the end of the day before I get into bed. Some nights it's journaling, for example, but I try really hard somehow or another to purge anger or stress I'm holding on to so I can rest. So maybe find something that helps you either let go of bad energy or helps you, tap into better energy. Maybe for you that's a meditation or a mantra or a prayer or a gratitude practice or a primal scream in the bathroom or whatever. I think it has been helpful for me to find a practice to release stress, which often feels like anger to me personally, before I try to shut down for the night. It does not always work, but it never hurts. Okay, I think that's most of what I wanted to say about sleep particularly, but I did just want to touch back on something that I've learned about trying to form habits through addition like this. So, if you're working on a habit, you're probably either trying to add something in or eliminate something that's bad. And in this case, I'm trying to add in some sleep goodness. I think the good thing about a habit of addition is that you can kind of figure out when you need the thing to happen or what the deadline is for doing it in a day. And so sometimes you can use a timer or a reminder or even a checklist to sort of stay locked in on that goal. So if I want to add a consistent bedtime, I know when I want that to be, and I can set a reminder however many minutes before then that I need. Or if you want to add more, cruciferous vegetables to your diet, God help you, you could maybe set up a daily checklist and slap cruciferous veg on it as an item and remind yourself to look at your list before dinner. And if you check that box at lunch, great. And if not, dinner is probably your last chance to load up on broccoli for the day to hit your goal. And like me, you can choose to load up on broccoli or to ignore that prompt, but at least for a second, you have to make that conscious choice about whether or not you're actually going to hit your goal. So I really like the work of Gretchen Rubin, who writes a lot about habit formation. She writes a lot about a lot of stuff, but habit formation is sort of one of her realms. And she's talked about the strategy of scheduling and said that if something goes on a calendar or on a timeline, it's just much more likely to happen. She also says sometimes what you measure, you can manage. And I think both of those ideas are true and helpful in certain circumstances. I think there's a power in tying an action we want to adopt to a specific repeating time in our schedule or a timeline or a list of some sort. And maybe you're not struggling with sleep, but maybe there's something else that you really want to fold into your life. And I think maybe finding a way to track it or timeline it might help. Okay, execution score time, horror, carnage, disaster, a mere 2 out of 10 on go to sleep. This might be the hardest rock that I'm up against in my whole life, just in terms of not harpooning myself into extinction with my own bad habits. And to be honest, I kind of just keep whiffing this day after day. I'm going to give myself the 2 points though, because I'm at least aware of how detrimental lack of sleep is to me, and I do try sometimes. And regardless of this abysmal score, it's on my list of 50 things because, remember, these are things I know and believe. They're not necessarily things I personally succeed at. Okay, that's enough for today. Please go to bed at a decent hour tonight, and thanks for spending some time with me today. I'll be back next week with thing number 8. Go to sleep.